The scent of lemon groves and sun-baked earth was supposed to be the perfume of my forever. Instead, it became the smell of the most profound betrayal a human heart can endure. I saw him standing there, at the end of the stone-paved aisle, bathed in the golden Tuscan light we had dreamed of for 2 years. My Liam wasn't looking at me. He turned, and my breath caught in my throat, a shard of ice in the summer heat. Next to him, radiant in a white dress that was not my white dress, was Ava, my friend, his colleague. And as the officiant began to speak, I realized this wasn't a nightmare I would wake up from. This was my wedding. And my fiancé was marrying someone else. Hey everyone, we're a new channel dedicated to bringing you the most unbelievable true stories every single day. If you want to hear more tales of love, loss, and the wild complexities of human life, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. It had all started, as the best and worst stories do, with a dream. A dream of a wedding under the Tuscan sun. Not a stuffed FY ballroom or a generic hotel, but something that felt like us. Liam was the one who found the place online. Villa di Fiori, a restored 15th century estate nestled in the rolling hills of Chianti, with cypress trees standing like sentinels and vineyards stretching to the horizon. "Look at this, Chloe," he'd said, turning his laptop towards me on our worn-out sofa in our tiny Chicago apartment. His eyes, the color of warm honey, were brighter than I'd seen them in months. Can you imagine it? Saying "I do" right there, with all of that behind us? The pictures were intoxicating. A terracotta roof, ivy crawling up ancient stone walls, a shimmering blue pool that reflected the endless sky. It was perfect. It was expensive. Insanely expensive. "Liam, it's a movie set. How could we ever afford this?" I traced the image of the grand terrace, with my finger already picturing our first dance under a canopy of fairy lights. "I've been saving," he said, his voice low and confident. "A bonus from the firm, some smart investments. I want to give you this, Chloe. I want to give us this. The lawn. The perfect start." That was Liam. Grand gestures, boundless optimism. He was a junior partner at a finance firm. A world of numbers and high-stakes deals I barely understood. I was a graphic designer, my life painted in pixels and Pantone colors. He was the anchor, I was the sail. Or so I thought. Fine. The planning became my full-time obsession. Spreadsheets, mood boards, endless calls with our wedding planner, Adi, a wonderfully efficient Italian woman named Sophia. We booked it for a year and a half out, giving us time to save and for our 100 or so guests to make arrangements. My sister, Maya, who was my maid of honor, thought I was insane. "Tuscany? Seriously?" she'd said over one of our weekly video calls, her eyebrow arched in. That way, that meant she was being both judgmental and genuinely concerned. "Do you know how much a flight to Florence costs? And you want Aunt Carol to navigate that? It's our dream, May, and everyone's getting plenty of notice." "It's his dream, you mean?" Passel. I bristled at that. "It's ours. We chose it together." "He chose it. You fell in love with it. There's a difference." Maya was always the cynic, the pragmatist to my romantic. She loved Liam, but she held a small piece of herself back, observing him with a scrutiny I never could. Looking back, her skepticism was a red flag I painted over with rose gold calligraphy. There were other flags too, tiny, fluttering things I barely noticed in the whirlwind of excitement. Like the way his phone, once casually left on the coffee table, was now always in his pocket or face down. "Just work stuff, he'd say with an easy smile. "Don't want the notifications bothering you." Or the hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, his back to the glass door. I'd catch snippets. "The transfer, making sure it's secure. She doesn't need to worry about it." Himself. I assumed it was all related to the wedding finances, this grand surprise he was funding. I felt a surge of love for him, for his dedication to making my dream a reality. The irony is a physical ache in my chest, even now. The biggest flag was Ava. She'd started at Liam's firm about a year before the wedding. He talked about her constantly. Ava closed the Henderson deal. AVA has this crazy idea for the quarterly reports. Ava and I pulled an all-nighter getting the presentation ready. She sounded brilliant. Ambitious, a female version of him. I was eager to meet her. When I finally did, at a company dinner, she was intimidating, tall, sleek, with a haircut that probably cost more than my rent, and a laugh that was sharp and knowing. She was polite to me, but in a detached way, her eyes scanning me as if I were a line item she was assessing. She directed most of her conversation, and all of her intense focus, to Liam. They had an inside joke rapport that left me feeling like a third wheel at my own table. "She's a bit much," I told Liam in the Uber home. "Also, she's just very driven," he defended, a little too quickly. "You have to be, in our world. She's a great asset to the team, a real friend." A few months later, the RSVPs were rolling in. Liam came to me, looking sheepish. "Hey, so, weird question. You know my cousin Mark? His +1 just dropped out. What, would it be awful if we let Ava come? She's been so amazing at work, covering for me while I'm doing wedding stuff, and she was saying how she's never been to Italy." I hesitated. Something felt of but what could I say? That I was intimidated by her? That I didn't like the way she looked at my fiancé? I'd sound like a jealous, insecure child. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. "The more the merrier." The week of the wedding arrived like a fever dream. We flew into Florence, the air thick with history and the promise of what was to come. Maya was with me, my parents on a separate flight. Liam and his family, including his best man, Ben, were already at the villa, having arrived a day early to get things settled. The drive to the Villa di Fiori was everything I had imagined: winding roads flanked by olive groves, glimpses of terracotta rooftops, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. When we finally pulled through the wrought iron gates, my heart felt like it was going to burst. It was real, it was happening. Liam greeted me on the grand staircase, sweeping me into a hug that felt a little too tight, a little too desperate. "It's perfect, isn't it?" he whispered into my hair. "It's more than perfect," I breathed, my eyes drinking in the stone fountains, the blooming bougainvillea, the sheer, breathtaking beauty of it all. The first 2 days were a blissful blur of welcome dinners, wine tasting in the villa's own cellar, and lounging by the pool. Our friends and family mingled, their laughter echoing across the courtyards. It was a perfect facade. Liam was the perfect host, charming and attentive. Then, his best man was his usual jovial self, a big, friendly bear of a man who'd been Liam's best friend since kindergarten. My sister Maya was, for once, seemingly content, a glass of Prosecco permanently in her hand. But even in paradise, there were shadows. I noticed Liam and Ava in quiet conversation by the pool, their heads close together. When they saw me approach, they sprang apart, their smiles a little too bright. "Just talking strategy for the merger back home," Liam said, clapping her on the shoulder. Ava just gave me a cool, unreadable nod. The night before the wedding, we had our rehearsal dinner on the main terrace. Liam gave a speech, his voice thick with emotion. He talked about the first time he saw me, how he knew instantly I was the one. He looked directly at me, his honey-colored eyes sincere and loving. "T.O. Chloe," he said, raising his glass. "My beginning, my middle, and my end. I can't wait to make you my wife tomorrow." Everyone cheered. I cried, of course. I looked over at Maya, who was watching Liam with a strange, analytical expression. She caught my eye and gave me a small, tight smile. That night, we slept in separate rooms, as per tradition. He kissed me goodnight at my door. "I love you more than anything," he said. It was the last time he would ever say that to me. The morning of the wedding was chaos and champagne. My suite was filled with my bridesmaids, my mother-y, and the frantic energy of hairspray and last-minute steaming. I felt strangely calm, a serene bubble in the center of the storm. This was it, the culmination of everything. Around noon, Sophia, our planner, knocked on the door. "Chloe, a small issue. Liam is not in his suite. His best man, Ben, cannot find him." A flicker of annoyance. "He's probably just getting some air. He gets nervous. His phone is also of Sophia said, her professional calm wavering slightly. Maya shot me a look. I'll go find him. Probably just has cold feet. She said it as a joke, but it landed. With a thud. An hour passed. Then another. The guests were starting to arrive, taking their seats in the immaculate garden where the ceremony was to be held. The string quartet was playing Vivaldi. My father, looking impossibly handsome in his tuxedo, was pacing by the door. My bubble of calm had popped, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Then Maya burst back into the room, her face pale. I found him. And? I demanded, standing up so fast my head spun. He's with Ava, in her room. They were talking. Talking? Just get ready, Chloe, she said, her voice strained. He's going to the altar. Ben is with him. Just get ready. I didn't understand, but I did as I was told. I let them put the veil in my hair. I let my dad take my arms. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the soft strings of the quartet. As we walked out into the blindingly bright afternoon, everything seemed to move in slow motion. The faces of our guests turned towards me, smiling. I saw my mom in the front row, dabbing her eyes. I saw Ben standing near the altar, his face ashen, refusing to meet my gaze. And then, I saw the altar, the arch. The flower arch we had designed together, overflowing with white roses and eucalyptus. I saw the officiant. And I saw Liam. He was wearing the custom Tom Ford tuxedo we had picked out in Chicago. His back was to me. My dad squeezed my arm, and we took another step. Liam turned. And my world stopped. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm, was Ava. She was wearing a simple, elegant white slip dress. A wedding dress. Her sleek hair was adorned with a delicate baby's breath crown. Sound. She looked serene, beautiful, and completely, utterly triumphant. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. I heard my mother cry out, a sharp, wounded sound. Oh. My father stopped walking, his hand on my arm like a vice. What in God's name is this? He whispered, his voice trembling with rage. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. My mind was a screaming void, trying to process the impossible image before me. Liam. Ava, the officiant, who was now looking between them and me with wide, panicked eyes. Liam finally looked at me. There were no tears in his eyes, no regret, just a kind of placid resolve. He mouthed the words, I'm sorry. Sorry. The word didn't even begin to cover the chasm that had just opened up in front of me, threatening to swallow me whole. That's when the first scream tore from my throat. It wasn't my voice. It was the sound of a soul being ripped in two. Chaos erupted. My father let go of my arm and started striding towards the altar, shouting Liam's name. Maya was suddenly there, her arms around me, trying to shield me, to pull me back, but I was frozen, my eyes locked on the scene of my own execution. Hungry. Guests were on their feet, yelling, pointing. I saw Liam's parents, their faces masks of horror and confusion. Ben, the best man, looked like he was going to be sick. He took a step towards Liam, then stopped, utterly lost. The officiant, a poor local man who just wanted to get paid, was stammering in broken English. Signora, please, there is a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. Ava placed a calming hand on Liam's arm, then looked out at the crowd. At me, with an expression of pure, unadulterated victory. She had won. This was her prize. My father reached them. What have you done? He roared, his voice echoing across the manicured lawns. Liam finally spoke, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the noise. I love her, David. I'm marrying her. Today. The finality of it hit me harder than a physical blow. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. A meticulously executed coup. The villa, the guests, the expense. It wasn't for me, it was for her. He had used my dream, our dream, as the stage for his new life. Maya finally managed to drag me away, back towards the villa, my multi-$1,000 dress, dragging in the dirt. The beautiful string music had been replaced by a cacophony of shouting and crying. The scent of lemon groves was now thick with the stench of betrayal. The hours that followed are a fractured mosaic of horror. I remember sitting on the floor of my suite, still in my wedding dress, while Maya and my mother made frantic phone calls. I remember the sound of my father's voice booming through the villa as he confronted Liam's parents, who were apparently as blindsided as we were. I remember Ben knocking on my door, his eyes red-rimmed. "Chloe, I swear to God, I had no idea. He told me this morning. He said he was calling it of F with you. I thought he was just going to tell you. I didn't know he was going to do this." His voice broke. "He made me choose, Chloe. He said, if I wasn't his best man today, we were done. 40 years of friendship. He's not the man I thought he was." The confrontation with Liam came later. He had the audacity to come to my door. Maya tried to block him, but I wanted to see him. I needed to see him. He stood there in the doorway, still in his tuxedo. Ava was nowhere to be seen. "Chloe, I am so sorry for the way this happened," he began, as if he were apologizing for spilling coffee on me. "Sorry?" My voice was a raw whisper. "Sorry? You humiliated me in front of everyone I love. You stole my wedding. You stole 2 years of my life." What could you possibly have to say? "I fell in love with her," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I fought it. But I couldn't, and I couldn't hurt you by just calling it of F. I thought this was the only way to just get it over with, to be honest." "Honest?" I laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "Why, oh, you think this is honesty? This is the most cowardly, cruel, monstrous thing I have ever witnessed. You brought me to my dream location to live out my worst nightmare. Why? Why do it this way, Liam?" He finally had the grace to look away. "Ava, she wanted a wedding, a real wedding, and everything was already here. Paid for, it seemed, efficient. Efficient. He used the word efficient to describe the detonation of my entire world. That was the moment my heartbreak curdled into pure, cold rage. "Get out," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret." He left, and I collapsed. The next 24 hours were a logistical and emotional hellscape. Sophia, to her eternal credit, was a warrior. She was on the phone with the villa's management, with vendors, with the travel agency. We had to figure out how to get 100 devastated and furious guests home. Liam and his new bride had apparently checked out and left for an undisclosed honeymoon location, leaving a trail of financial and emotional carnage. The bill for the villa, which Liam had supposedly paid from his bonus, was, of course, largely outstanding. My father, bless his heart, put it on his credit card, his face a grim mask of fury. The story, naturally, went viral. A cousin of a friend had filmed the whole thing on her phone. From my walk down the aisle to my father's confrontation, by the time we landed back in Chicago, the video had millions of views. My face, frozen in shock and horror, was a meme. The headlines were brutal. "Jilted bride left at altar as fiancé marries another woman. Tuscan wedding nightmare. Groom's ultimate betrayal." My life became a public spectacle. I couldn't leave my apartment without being recognized. People would stop me in the grocery store to for hugs or, worse, advice. Reporters camped outside my building. The months that followed were a slow, painful crawl out of a very deep, very dark hole. I spent the first few weeks in a fog of grief, replaying every moment, every red flag I had so willfully ignored. The secret calls, his defensiveness about Ava, the efficient logic of a sociopath. Maya was my shadow, making sure I ate, fielding calls, and guarding me like a dragon. My friends formed a protective circle, reminding me that the life Liam and I had built was an illusion, but their love was real. Therapy helped. Talking it out, piece by painful piece, allowed me to see the pattern. Liam wasn't a monster who appeared overnight. He was a man who had been building a secret life for over a year. He didn't have the courage to end one life before starting another, so he simply tried to overwrite it. Like a corrupted file. He didn't just betray me, he tried to erase me. Slowly, very slowly, I started to pick up the pieces. I threw out everything he had ever given me. I deleted every photo. I blocked him, Ava, and anyone associated with them on every platform. I poured myself into my work, creating designs with a ferocity and passion I hadn't felt in years. I learned that Ben, the best man, had cut all contact with Liam. He sent me a long, heartfelt email, apologizing again, telling me that the man he knew was gone, replaced by a stranger. I never heard from Liam's parents. Their shame was probably too much for them to bear. It's been a year now. The internet has mostly moved on, as it always does. The pain is no longer a gaping wound, but a scar. It still pulls sometimes, a reminder of the damage done, but it doesn't bleed. I sold the apartment we shared and moved into a small studio in a different neighborhood. A space that was entirely my own. I don't know if I believe in fairy tales anymore. I don't know if I believe in a perfect start. What I do believe in is resilience. I believe in the fierce, stubborn love of a sister who will fly across the world to stand by your side. I believe in the strength of a father who will defend your honor no matter the cost. I believe in friends who will show up with ice cream and bad movies and sit with you in the dark. Liam tried to make me a footnote in his story, a casualty of his grand romance. But he failed. This is my story, the story of a woman who walked through fire and came out the other side, not unscathed, but whole, stronger, free. The Tuscan sun he stole from me can't compare to the dawn I'm building for myself. What do you think? I'm the Targe. Is this a calculated, malicious plan from the start, or the act of a desperate coward? I've gone over it a million times in my head, and I still don't have the answer. I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below.